Yeah, thank you, Keith. All right, I'm Alessandro Gargano. A little bit about myself is I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. I've been with RPI for a little bit over a year and a half now. I started as a business analyst, and now I'm a senior business analyst. I play college lacrosse. I'm an avid fly fisherman, and I recently got engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, my name's Chris Gordon. I had been in Baltimore for a very long time, about 10 years, up until 6 months ago. Just moved a little southwest to Philadelphia to be closer to home. I've been with RPI since 2013, so coming up on 10 years this April. And I started as an analyst, and I now manage the finance practice. Big fan of college football, graduated from Penn State. It's a big passion on Saturdays during the fall, and looking forward to the upcoming playoffs. But I'm married, I have a daughter, and 2 crazy dogs. And we're excited to be here with you today. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking through what's new and cool in CloudSuite. We didn't have enough time to go through every single release note that has happened since last January, but we've scrolled through what's out there, and we're highlighting what we think is worthwhile sharing. So that's what we're going to cover today.
So what is a CU and how often are they? So CU stands for Customer Update, and basically what they are is something that Infor is adding to the software to enhance the functionality of the current version that you operate on. So the way these work now is they release on a monthly basis. They go into pre-prod environments on the second Thursday of every month, and then they go into your prod environment on the third Saturday of every month. We attached a KB article to the bottom of this slide, and Infor recommends that you subscribe to that because that's where it's going to have all of your monthly release notes and any documentation about the CUs that they are releasing.
Great, and you can even sign up for, like you said, email notifications to be notified of new things that come out. Go to that KB article, download documentation if you need to. And you can also get to the What's New section within Infor's documentation through their online. So if you go to the online Infor Docs, there's a section up in the top left for what's new, and you can also get the list of what's new there. All right, first up here we have our vendor or vendor location update workflow. This is in addition to the already delivered request new vendor workflow. This is a brand new workflow to automate the approvals for changing fields on a vendor. In this example here, we have an example where a vendor was to be paid via check, but maybe they're going to change to be paid via ACH, and we need to make that change in Infor. So we've started this form with a new ACH transaction code. We might want to update their routing and banking information too. You can put all that into this form, click submit, have that go through the delivered approval flow, and then once that gets approved, those changes happen. Now, you could update that flow too. It's an IPA workflow that's driving all of this. So if you do have specific requirements and need to route that differently, you can update the workflow to do that too. This will update your vendor and vendor location, so both your old AP10s, your AP10.2s, and it's not available to buyers or requesters. Unlike the request new vendor workflow, where if you're a buyer and you're on a PO and you click on the vendor field, you can request a new vendor directly from that purchase order. You can't do that with this workflow. This is isolated to AP, and that makes sense. You don't want a requester or a buyer typically triggering a workflow to make a vendor update. So that's maintained within AP, and it's nice. It can automate and streamline and bring all of those updates through this workflow and a single source or a single team to ultimately sign off and approve of the changes that need to be made. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, if we go through this workflow, what about me who's already got access to go update a vendor? This doesn't prevent that still from happening. So if you did want to move all of your vendor management business processes within this workflow, you'd want to go update the security role assigned to that person to prevent them from doing it manually.
So our next one is tolerances for add-on costs. So now customers have the ability to define tolerances for add-on costs within the match rule itself. So just a little bit about this, that it's not a necessary requirement. You don't need to define tolerances for match rules, but now you have the ability to. And it's really only going to make sense if you as a customer are adding add-on charges to your purchase orders. And it's just adding another layer of matching requirements to your matching process.
Yep. So if the PO had a shipping add-on cost code for $50 and the invoice came in for $75, and that was outside of whatever tolerance you got, it's going to kick out a matching error.
Yep.
And someone's going to have to work that. All right, staying in the matching area, we've got a couple more enhancements that we want to highlight here. For PO cost messaging, you can do this now for service type items in Infor, in CloudSuite. Just like you would do it for non-stock specials and inventory, service items now can trigger that PO cost message upon invoice entry. So if you have an invoice unit cost that's outside of tolerance compared back to your PO unit cost, the AP specialist will receive that notification as soon as they're entering the invoice, just like they would for any other types. That is turned on at your match company. It doesn't just happen. It's a decision point to make whether or not you want to turn that on or not, and it's on the messaging tab of your match company. Another item on your match company as well, this is the ability to automate the messaging of invoices that don't have receipts, which is pretty nice. In this example here, you see 10 as my number of receipt days and my due date as my basis date. So what that's saying is if today's date is within 10 days of my invoice due date, and I'm trying to match an invoice that's got no receipts, it'll trigger an email notification alerting the buyer on the PO that, hey, this invoice is coming to be paid soon. There's still no receipt in the system. What's going on? And it can start communication and resolution around why there's no receipt. So a nice tool to add. Matching's always a difficult and challenging area, and whatever you can build in to improve that is helpful. This notification can be in batch mode or online. What that means is if you had 50 invoices that didn't have a receipt, if you choose the online method, you're going to get 50 emails that fly out, which you might not like. You could do batch mode and have that be one email instead. Okay, this is brand new for CloudSuite as well. Functionality that we particularly like and wanted to share. When it comes to matching, right, we have PO cost messages, and let's lay out the scenario of what's actually happening here. So we've got a PO cost message created because the vendor overcharged. They might have sent an invoice with a unit cost of $100 and it should have only been $80. We talk to the vendor and they say, yep, we billed you wrong, here's a credit for the difference. When we handle that in Infor, we would, obviously the system's going to create the message right away upon invoice entry. We would then accept when that PO cost message is created, accept that cost message in Smart Recon. And then you do a force match in Smart Reconciliation to create a recon message, which basically puts a stop on the invoice. It can't be paid. It's got an open message. And once AP receives the credit for the difference, the next step would be to approve that recon message, enter the credit, and you can see in the screenshot here, when you match the credit back to the PO and the invoice, the original invoice, you'll get this Create Memo Cost Adjustment option. So what that's doing, Infor, all this is happening within Infor, so it knows, hey, there's an adjustment needed for this PO line. Here's the credit to come in and make that adjustment. So you pick the line or lines that credit needs to get matched back to. This this action doesn't close the recon message. The recon message would need to be closed first, then AP enters the credit, everything gets matched at that point, and the original invoice, the credit, all get paid, and the vendor gets the right amount. So it's just another option to handle those scenarios where the invoice unit cost and the PO unit cost are discrepant, and the vendor is going to send a credit for a rebill, or for the difference, sorry.
This next one is an invoice routing enhancement. So this is specifically for AP processors. If they unintentionally route an invoice to the wrong routing category, they can now go into the invoice record itself and then reroute that invoice at the top of the invoice record. They can also do this from the list view by right-clicking and completing the action that way. This basically just allows for a quicker approval of misrouted invoices. Unfortunately, this function is not available to the approver themselves or the individual who's actually coding the invoice throughout the approval process. They cannot reroute the invoice. They're going to have to reject it, and it's going to have to go back to AP for them to then reinstate and reroute themselves. But this is great for AP processors. If they notice that the invoice is going the wrong direction, they can grab it before the coder gets to it and reroute that before it has to be rejected.
Yep. I like this because it makes it a little bit more simple. Instead of having to reject the invoice and it go to a separate queue, and then you have to reinstate and resubmit through the entire process. One click of the button to reroute this to where it needs to go.
Exactly.
So pretty nice stuff.
So these next ones are very cool. This is a cash requirement template is now available in FSM, which is going to be so helpful for so many customers. Why? It's going to increase efficiency and reduce errors when you're completing your pay cycles. Some template examples: patient refunds, ACH payment runs, vendor-specific check runs. The list goes on and on. This is also great for new employees, training purposes. The new employee doesn't need to be trained on what every single field within the cash requirements means. You can go tell them to run template X, Y, or Z, and they can go run template X, Y, or Z and complete their pay cycles, and then kind of learn what each field means as they're doing this on a regular basis. So great enhancement.
And you can still set up jobs, right? Like some people might have a job set up for the cash requirements, but this is nice. You can build a catalog of different templates, have that out there for anyone to choose from, and it's the old one, AP 150 for everyone coming from V10. And there's a lot of fields on that form, right? From the top to the bottom: cash codes, payment codes, enclosures, pay immediately.
Vendor
so
type, vendors,
you can easily miss something. And the templates here allow you to put some time into that up front. What should our templates look like? Have them out there, and then use them throughout your weekly AP check runs. Next up here is the ability to manually control when an ACH remittance would get sent to the vendor. If you weren't aware, I'll let you know now that Infor can, through IDM, create ACH remittance documents for your vendors. So if you pay a vendor, that ACH payment's going to go to the bank and ultimately into the vendor's bank account. But you can customize and create a ACH remittance advice that can get sent from Infor into, emailed to the vendor contact, which is really cool stuff. There's options there to either have that automatically get sent out when the payment cycle is closed, but you can also turn that setting off and you have complete control over when the remittance goes out, which might be nice because although ACH payments 99% of the time do settle, there might be occasions they don't, and you don't want to send a vendor a remittance advice if the money actually never got there. So there's the ability to manually do this. You can do it one at a time, or as you see in the picture, highlight a few rows at once, right-click them, and say, send remittance.
So this next one is actually a void stop pay trigger was added to the payment void function. So this is going to eliminate the need to switch from a cash to a payables role to actually run that stop pay update job. So it's combining two jobs into one, making end users' lives a little bit easier. They don't have to navigate around the system. It's just a one-stop shop now. And this is going to generate your payment void stop pay update report for you. And cool thing about this, you don't have to do one record at a time. You can select multiple records and run the void and the payment void stop pay update against multiple records at once. What this will do is produce an output file for each individual transaction you select. So it's not going to consolidate them into one report, but it's going to produce a report for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the old AP 190.
Yep, I really like this one. It helps because when you're voiding a payment, you're CB80 or in the new system, you're doing it right there, and usually the next step is let's go do the AP 190 or the reinstatement program. But now it's all in one place.
Yep.
And that saves time, and it's still doing exactly what that program would do. You can go into the output file of the reinstatement program and still see a journalized group number. Mm-hmm. So each one of those would still be journalized individually, and you'd still get the same journalized number you would if you were to do it in a batch program.
So this next one, you can print multiple copy B 1099 forms per page now. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but Infor IDM offers you the ability to print 1099s through IDM. So last tax season was kind of the first season this was available. So they've been working on it, enhancing it ever since, and this year it's going to be a little more efficient for you. You can actually, as you see with this screenshot here, you can print 2 copies per page versus before it was just one copy B per page.
Next up is the ability to copy budget change requests. If you do a budget change request in your budget scenario, you might want to also do that same change request in other scenarios too. Maybe you have maybe you have a dozen scenarios out there for budgeting, and you need to keep those in sync. So you do that change request on your main budget scenario, and now you can copy that out to all 12 to keep them all in sync. Instead of having to do that manually, which could take, instead of 20 minutes, this might only take 5. It is a one at a time activity, so you're copying one to another, and then one to another, and one to another. But you can bring along all the attachments, all the comments. If you need to reverse any signs, maybe you made a mistake, right? You put a budget in first, and it was the wrong number, and we need to get that out. So you can use this to reverse out what was in there originally, and keep all the. Sometimes it's nice to see what was in there first, and then it getting removed. You have history of the entire process. All right. We also have 4 new fields in General Ledger Transaction Detail. These are GHR fields. Our org unit, our job, pay code, and position are all delivered fields in Global Ledger now, and that's meant to accommodate the payroll transactions coming over from payroll. If those fields are populated in payroll, they will make their way over into the Global Ledger, giving you more detail, visibility into what's coming over from the payroll system. If before this enhancement, if you wanted to see that data, you needed to create user fields and map those fields from GHR into these fields, but it's nice to see that they're delivered now.
So this next one is a project contract funding alert. So basically what this one's doing is you have your project contract record, and if you notice that there's a red exclamation next to your project contract ID, what that's telling you is that you don't have a funding source attached to your project contract. So without a funding source, you can't really do much. So it's basically just an extra safeguard for individuals who are setting up these project contracts. There's a lot of steps. It's a lengthy process. So this is just kind of another reminder that you got to add your funding source before you can be complete.
Very good.
And this next one is Recalculate Fringe Burdens. So this one's a big one. Customers can now recalculate fringe burdens without having to reverse and redistribute the entire entry. So one, easier to train new staff on error resolution. And if your fringe rate does change, this feature allows you to recalculate your fringe burden amount if the entry's already been posted to the GL. And the way it does this is it isolates the fringe burden distributions within the GL entry by event code, and then pulls just that portion out, reverses it, and then redistributes it with whatever change you made. So you don't have to mess with the whole entry anymore. It's just pulling out those fringe burden distributions.
It won't touch the original payroll entry if
Yep.
that's what the fringe is being calculated on. It's just the fringe event code, and then that'll
Correct.
get unwound, so to speak, based on however you set this program up, by burden code, by posting project, and over a specific time period. All right, 3 analysis reports that I wanted to point out within GL and Project Ledger. The first one here being our period over period analysis, sort of like a trend analysis, giving you the ability to look at, here we have January through September, period amounts by account, and up top in our parameters we can search by project, we can search by account, we can search by department, and then expanding out, blowing out all of your chart to get down to the detail that you need to. What's nice about all 3 of these forms that we're going to look at is the detail transaction also lives within the same report. So not only are you getting balances up top, you're getting, in this case, totals in this panel, but also the transactions. If you go to the other one, we'll load the transactions that make up your balance. It can all be exported too, which is nice. You can isolate a specific project, pull out transactions and balances for that project. Same with a department. Just showing some options here, what to compare. This is the full year, but you can do month comparison to previous year and quarter comparison to previous years as well. Any of these can be pivoted by different dimensions. We have accounts as the delivered dimension, but you can pivot by company, project, or finance dimension 1. A little bit different, just a period comparison here to show functional beginning balance, activity, closing balance. Again, comparing whatever you're putting up top, department, project, company. And last but not least, our variance analysis. Same concept, same format and layout, but we're looking more at variances between periods or years. Anything with a blue hyperlink you can click into and get detail behind, which is really nice. Account analysis is also a nice place to go. It's not brand new for 2022. It's been out there for quite some time. However, the ability to publish your report is brand new. So before, you would build your own account analyses. You might have a dozen, you might have 1, you might have a bunch. And those were just yours, right? If we were working together, I couldn't see yours, you couldn't see mine, but now you can build your report, come up here, and say set as public, and then Alessandro can see my report. And a quick screenshot about what this looks like. We do see 2 new tabs within the account analysis showing your own reports, and then also the public reports. So think of public as just a giant collection of your department's reports, and that's where they're going to live.
And this one is global and actor-specific project reporting. So similar to the account analysis setting that we just looked at, within project reporting itself, you can have global reports that your entire organization would be available to view. And then you can have your actor-specific reports, which are going to be just for yourself. No one else will be able to see that. So easier to disperse project reports throughout your organization, but then actors can also have their own individual things that they still like to look at.
Yeah, real similar to the account analysis from before, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that wraps up everything that we wanted to share with everyone today.
Yeah.
While you're thinking through questions, if you have them, just put them right into the chat. Want to throw a couple slides up here while you're doing that, just to highlight some upcoming events here. In January, we have a CloudSuite Bootcamp that's happening in warm, sunny Tampa, Florida, which you'll be in attendance
I will be
for.
an instructor for. So if you're looking to come on to CloudSuite or thinking about implementing or assisting in implementation, this is the place to be.
Yep, a lot of stuff to cover in 3 days, but a worthwhile event. And if you have any questions about that, just reach out. And then a little bit later on, from February 28th to March 2nd, here in Baltimore, we'll be hosting an HCM road mapping festival. So probably doesn't apply to too many directly of you on the finance call here, but share with your counterparts, and we'd be very excited to see everyone here.